Good morning and welcome. Thank you all for being here, and for those of us who are online, thank you guys too. My name is Julie Dobrow. I'm the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at the School of the Arts, and I'm going to hand things over to Mia Masaoka, who can tell you a little bit about the program.
Hey, good morning, and I'm the director of the Sound Art program here and also the chair of the Visual Art Department here at Columbia. And if you're on Zoom, good afternoon or good evening, as the case may be. I want to begin by introducing or having self-introductions by the other members of the panel, and starting with Seth Cluett.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Seth Cluett. I'm the Assistant Director of the Sound Art MFA program and the Director of the Computer Music Center, faculty in the Department of Music and the Institute for Data Science. Moving on, Miles Scharf.
And I just want to say that they were an alum, and we have an alum, and we also have a current student in our program. And afterwards, you keep questions in your mind and feel free to ask any of us, including our students, questions. Sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Miles. I am a visiting researcher at the Computer Music Center and an alumni of the Sound Art program.
Hello, my name is Alec. I'm a second year in the Sound Art program. We have open studios later today, so please feel free to come by and say hello and see some of my work, and the work of the other people in the Sound Art program as well.
So our Sound Art program has evolved with Brad Garton and along with Douglas Repetto, who initiated the program. It's a young, living, evolving program and part of a vibrant field and interdisciplinary area of scholarship and art making. The Sound Art program has a rich and important history with the Columbia-Princeton Electronic Music Center, which Seth will be speaking more about later. And it has an important place in our studios and in our hearts and takes up an entire wall in my office. And people come from all over the world to do selfies there. And we are considered to be, we're a hybrid program with the Computer Music Center, and we share their spaces, and it's a great kind of collaboration. However, the degrees are the degree is bestowed in the visual art program. And as a small program, we work closely with the students, and students are admitted under the rubric of sound art. But once you're in the program, you're able to take classes in sculpture, painting, photography, or classes in the larger university of, for example, philosophy, architecture, art history. So you can really reach out to these other branches of intellectual inquiry, and that in turn informs your work as an artist. And as a student artist, your perspective is also different, for example, different from a science major in these other research classes. So in that sense, we are an art school that's embedded in this amazing world-class research university, and there's so much that can be benefited from that relationship. I will say that our program is very rich for the student artist. One of the things that we have is what we call the mentor program. And our mentor this semester has been James Hoff. And this is a special time in your life where 1 week out of your life, you are excused from all your other classes, and you spend time with the mentor, kind of the old student master relationship that maybe existed in Europe and also Asia, where you spend not day and night with the master artist, but you really, by osmosis, get a feel for what they're learning, thinking, and feeling as artists in the art world. And they'll take you to, for example, museums and introduce you to curators, bring you to art studios, and you get a real sense of what does it mean to be an artist in New York City with an artist who has really a different place in their career. And it's one of the special times in your life where you can devote this much time to being with an artist mentor. And people sometimes say that it's one of the most amazing parts of their lives, in fact. Another part of the program is the exhibitions. In fact, there's an exhibition today of open studios, and we do have Alec who can talk a little bit more about that about the work he's doing in that. And that's literally where all the second years, they can either open their studio door up and you can meet them, converse with them, and also they can have their particular works highlighted and what they want in their open studio. We have coming up in the sound art program, we have an exhibition in a black box in the cinematography room, and it's a way for students to have works in progress that then get critiqued by major theorists or even by other themselves. This semester we have Christoph Cox, who will be a lead critiquer for our sound art students, and that's coming up next month. There's also the first year show, of course, with the visual arts, and also the thesis show with the other visual arts students, and that's a beautiful, spectacular space here at Lenfest, and I encourage you all to attend those exhibitions if you have the chance. We are a very rare sound art program in New York City, and as we have access to, say, MoMA, the Whitney, the Guggenheim, and also smaller galleries, and also more of like the underground galleries and loft scenes such as it is and it exists now. And so we're able to access a lot of professionals and curators and artists from this very special location that is New York City. We are... And one thing we really care about is your growth as an artist in the program. And we are really proud of our alumni and how they are functioning in the world after they graduate the program. For example, we have one student who, after the show, she was invited to do a presentation and a group show at Katona Art Gallery, and later is now pursuing a PhD at Stanford University. We have another student who has gotten a contract with a local gallery. And so there are professional possibilities afterwards, but also what we are really concerned about is your growth as an artist, as a person in the world. So while it's an amazing place to have these opportunities, there's these other aspects of concern as well. The kind of invitations for visiting artists we have are really pretty spectacular, but I'll go and jump to some of the requirements. We keep the requirements for the program on the side, so you have time to develop your work in the studio. Just as a note, we expect basic ability to work with sound, edit sound in the computer with software before entering the program. We are not a basic program for sound art, so just so you know that, please be aware of some assumptions of basic skills in editing that we assume. So one of the critical issues this year is one of the requirements, and it's being taught by Tommy Martinez. And in this sense, it's a bit of a slight change, because there's been some students who have asked for more technical courses for critical issues, so we try to really respond to our students' needs. And so Tommy Martinez is focusing on microcomputing, some physical computing, and also robotics, and that's happening this semester. It won't happen every semester. It's possible something like this might happen every other semester. So we really try to be responsive to what you as the students care about. Mentor Week we've already talked about. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the application process. There is an application panel that Seth and I sit on, as well as some other faculty, and so it's a group. It's a group discussion, and our overall policy is not to evaluate materials outside of the application process. So we trust that the applicants will be able to decide for themselves as to their suitability for our program and pursuant to their research into what program the students are pursuing. So within that context, my suggestion for the application is that you are able to provide your best work and not try to second guess the panel or second guess what you think the panel thinks they want, or what you think they might want, but really show your best work. And I think there's about a slot on for maybe 10 10 examples. Is that right?
I think you can, up to 20 images.
Just for the Zoom.
Up to 20 images in slide room this year. So it gives you an opportunity to divide that as you'd like across the possibilities. So, 3 works per piece, or, 5 works for 3 pieces and a bunch of extra supplementary material, but it gives you a real opportunity to show us the breadth of your practice.
And all of us will be available for questions afterwards. So with that, we'll move on to Seth.
Sure. I was excited to hear Mia talking about some of the successes of our alums, and there's a couple of things that might actually be useful for you to know by way of specifics. If you're in town for a little bit, our recent alum, Char Jure, has a piece up at the Drawing Center in an exhibition down in Soho. She also happens to have a large-scale installation at the Palais de Tokyo Museum in Paris at the moment. Yishuan Shao and Bi Sheng have an exhibition at a gallery in New York. I'm blanking on the name, but we'll make sure to send stuff out to you for local exhibitions. There's been a number of students who've gone straight out of the program into professorial positions. So Lee Gilboa is assistant professor of electronic media and production at Berklee College of Music. Rosanna Caban is a teaching professor of performance media at Stevens Institute of Technology. And John Levy is director of the game sound program at Champlain College, just right out of graduating the MFA. So, and there's a number that have gone on to PhDs at Brown and RPI and Stanford and Princeton. And Gladstone Butler just released a new record as Gladstone Deluxe. So if you're looking for someone who does something a little more on the music side, that's a student who's gone on to other things. But my job today is to talk to you a little bit about our facilities. But I want to preface it by saying that usually after I talk about the facilities, people are like, that's a lot of technology. I don't know how to use all the technology. And Mia was right. We do expect people to come in sort of with a basic understanding of audio editing. That just is like the baseline. We will teach you other things like the depth of acoustics and the basics of electronics and all of that sort of stuff. But one of the things that we've been doing since I've been director for the last 2 years is focusing on equity and accessibility and technical space design around making the studios easy to use seamlessly for people who've been marginalized out of technical space. And the byproduct of that is for people who have not been marginalized out of technical spaces, the spaces are just as easy to use. And so what that means is a rule that we call 80/10, which is that you should be able to do 80% of a studio's function within the first 10 minutes of walking in the room, because we know that with technology there's sometimes this like blank-faced terror at the unpatched synthesizer, or at the blank page, or at the room with a bunch of knobs and sliders and faders that you don't know how to use. So we do come along with a lot of history. The space is the same 6,000 square feet as the original Columbia Princeton Electronic Music Center. So Alice Shields, Prill Smiley, Milton Babbitt, Roger Sessions, Vladimir Ushashevsky, Otto Luning, Halim Eldab, Bülent Arel. The list goes on and on. This is decades of people working in our studio spaces, and fascinatingly, in the archive we have logbooks of everyone who's ever worked here from 55 countries across the world. So for a long time, this place was the place where people learned to come and design studios and then go back to their home country and build them. But it was a sort of hotbed of innovation. Wendy Carlos is a student from the program. Halim Eldab, the person who wrote the first piece of electronic music in Cairo, Egypt in 1947 on a wire recorder, was a visiting faculty here in the 60s. And there's many more examples of that. We occupy that space in Prentice Hall across the street. It is the opposite of the shiny building that you sit in now. It is rough and tumble, but that gives us the freedom to kind of do whatever we want. It's a messy space. So our facilities are in the orange, with the here's my cursor up, with these studios being second year studios. You're given studio space to work on your practice, and then the first year studios are down here with this large workshop attached. There's an electronic music studio with an 8-channel Genelec system and a bunch of famous synthesizers, Surge synthesizers, the second Buchla. Bunch of stuff was invented in that room, the frequency shifter, the envelope generator. There's a ton of things from the early history of electronic music that were invented here, which is to say we have a bunch of exemplars of technology that you can come in and just sort of be exploratory and experimental with. The RCA Mark II synthesizer is still there if you want to see it. A lot of, Mia was mentioning, people take selfies. We've had school groups from Japan and Sweden and things like that fly to the States to spend time with the thing or study it. We have a project with Isotope software where we're modeling the filters as plugins. So there's a bunch of things that are going on in that regard. The old studios in 1989 look like this, big custom-built facilities for generating audio. We've since renovated the studios for a kind of hybrid engagement with both electronics and with computers. So we don't care very much about specific technology. We're just as likely to hardware hack a Casio with duct tape and rubber bands as we are to code our own computer music languages or build our own synthesizers or just patch analog synthesizers and enjoy the sounds. So that's an empty slide. Here's a little, this will, oh, excuse me, there we go. That's a little walk around of the studio. Figured to make it nicer to see it in.
Seem to be moving up there.
Oh, it's not, that's weird. Okay, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It's just a 360 of one room, and it does what it does. Cool, there we are. That's the other side of the room. That's a disc clavier. It's a piano that can play itself. I think this may not play in the video either. Sorry. This is our seminar room. The room is flexible. It can be taken apart or put back together as a standard seminar or as a workspace for doing electronics. I teach a class in the spring called Building Sound that does mechatronics and robotics in the context of people's kinetic sculptures, but also playback systems for people's sound installations. We have a number of synthesizers that are geared towards the undergraduate teaching here that are actually very useful for the students in the graduate programs that are meant to onboard people into technology in a smooth way. They're chosen for their interface design so that they're clear and legible to people. We have a small recording studio that's very well appointed in terms of technology and acoustics. It has ISO booths, so you can do voiceover recording. If you're doing video stuff where you need voiceovers or sound effects, you can record that in isolation there. We happen to have 2 EMT plate reverbs, if you know what those are. They're very, very rare, and we're in the process of renovating them at the moment. We have a fully appointed electronics lab with a full test and measurement stack that mirrors the equipment in the circuits lab at the engineering school. What that means is you can do everything from basic electronics hacking and never know how any of this stuff works to pushing yourself to understand how to do test and measurement work of your own circuits and those sorts of things with technology that would be standard in an electrical engineering program. We have a lot of digital fabrication stuff. This is an older photo. We've since gotten a new 3D printer that's twice as fast as the one over there, and so we're not having as much backup, but people are 3D printing little widgets that go in their installations you never see, but they're just things that ease the ability to fabricate what they're working on. It's a large workshop space associated with the first year studio, so there's 3 studios along the right wall where you're looking, and this big open space that the students are encouraged to orient and reorganize the stuff in there themselves as best fits their practice. This is another version of how students have oriented that space. Here's another version. This is also an older picture. This is a 8-channel ambisonic sound cube. What that basically means is a spherical sound reproduction system. It's now 12.1 channels, and the array on the back wall, which was a sort of homemade wavefield synthesis array, both Mia and I have worked with wavefield synthesis pretty extensively. We're in the process of building another wavefield array. If you don't know what those things are, it's basically acoustic holography. We can project imaginary sounds into the middle of space and make them seem like whole, invisible sculptures, things like that. Projects that we've done, sometimes our students participate in research. Chargeray and I worked on a project where we were working on making a graphic novel out of electrical conductive ink, an Afrofuturist graphic novel where we were building circuits into the pages of the novel in order to have communities that are concerned about data privacy, able to collect their own data and know of the integrity of the security of the system. We have students working on supporting faculty on their research projects. So this is George Lewis, who just spent the last year in France redoing version number 500 of Voyager, where the new piece incorporates contemporary AI technology, and this is something he's in dialogue with students and also with alums of our program. Our illustrious Professor Emeritus Brad Garton developed a sound-specific programming language that works inside the Unity game engine. That work is continuing, though Brad is retiring at the end of this semester. He has just recently been appointed Professor Emeritus, which means we'll still be able to email him questions when stuff comes up about some of this stuff. But I've worked with Unity pretty extensively, so if that's in your work package, I'm happy to support that work. A bunch of us work in novel acoustic displays. We're doing stuff with experimental instrument design. And I think I'll just end there and make sure we have time for questions, and we'll talk to some of the alums. But if questions come up, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Seth. And now I'd like to remind you all that if you have questions about the financial aid or anything about finances, we have Julie here, and so keep those questions in mind. And just bring our attention to Alec Green and maybe say a bit of some things that who's a current student, a second-year student, and maybe some couple sentences of some things you're interested in. And also feel free to ask questions to a current student here now with us.
Hello. Yeah, a few things that I'm interested in, I guess, with my practice and like what I'm gearing up to in terms of my thesis is I work a lot in text and books and like sculpture. So most of my thesis research is like creating sculptural text scores that can be interacted with the body, and yeah, things like this.
And
Right now,
Miles,
Alec is printing words on seashells.
And Miles Scharf was a student last year and is now.
Like I was saying before, my title is visiting researcher at the Computer Music Center. I'm funded by a National Science Foundation grant that I got in conjunction with Professor Barnard, who is also associated with the Computer Music Center and teaches computational sound and creative embedded systems. The research is meant to assist in that creative embedded systems class and also Seth's building sound class.
Thank you. And so we can open it up now for questions. Anybody? We do have a wireless microphone. You can, and so do any of you have? There's a hand here.
Go ahead.
Great. Yeah. And so this will also be heard on Zoom as well. So.
Hi. I was just wondering for the two, current student and alum, you said, you in your, there's room for your study. I just want to know, how the curriculum at Sound Art has helped you within your practice, within your, own personal interests and area of study.
I think it's helped in a huge way. I came into this program. I'm one of the only students in the current in the current sound art program that came from a visual arts background, and being in that community has made me kind of question a lot of things that I got from that background and expand in ways that I never thought that I could. And having the room and the space to explore with technologies that are new to me that I came in definitely kind of afraid of has also been really, really huge and helpful towards my practice.
I would say the same thing. I came from a physics degree before this, and I sort of thought that I was coming to this program to get really good at sound technology, which was not the case, but it ended up being a big blessing. There are many moments in sound art classes that I think changed the course of my artistic career. The one that really comes to mind is Seth made me read a basics electronics textbook, which made me very angry because I had spent so much time studying that. But I read something in there that has birthed probably like 8 works that have all been shown. Yeah, I'm very grateful for it.
The book is from 1954 and it's animated. But Miles, could you just tell us a little bit about some of the exhibitions you've done recently?
Yeah, so I think the program also gave me quite a bit of visibility. Right after thesis, I had a show with a gallery in the Lower East Side, and then another one in July, and then I was just invited to go to an art fair in London, and then just got 2 shows as a result of that. Also as a result of Seth diligently emailing every curator he's ever met, which was very kind. But yeah, like I think you can really take advantage of having the large studio space. Invite as many people as you can. Apprentice especially is a great building, because even though Columbia may be hard to access for visitors, Apprentice, you don't need to like register guests the day of. It's sort of like its own like little siphoned community.
One of the things we didn't mention in the facilities was that the sound art students have access to equally to the visual arts studio space, or the workspaces. There's a large and well-appointed wood shop, a metal shop with welding and sheet metal brakes and that sort of thing. There's also a ceramic studio, a printmaking studio, a digital photography studio, a dark room. And then in addition to that, we have partnerships with the Columbia Makerspace in the engineering school, which has 25 3D printers and laser cutters and CNC machines. If you don't know what those are, don't worry about it, but it's nice to know in a pinch. If you need them, you can use them. And then also the Barnard Design Studio, which does things like bioplastic fabrication and like making materials out of mushrooms and things like that. They do all sorts of experimental materials design, and they're a very open and inclusive space for people to experiment with things they don't know how to use. They have a zine for everything that you might want to learn. That's paper that they've printed out and drawn. So it's a really quite special place.
I would also like to say here that as a sound artist in the program, there's no requirements to actually make sound per se. It's a medium to work with. It's a material, but you can present work that has no sound, that might be conceptual, that might be abstract, that might have other aspects of materiality to consider. So coming into the program as admitted students, sound is the portal. But once you're in the program, you are an artist. And with that, you can be any kind of artist that you want to be, given, of course, it's a high-level situation. But I also want to ask, maybe it's a more logistical question, can those on Zoom type in questions? And also, okay, great. So I would encourage those on Zoom to also submit your questions in the chat, I suppose, and they will be looked at, and we will read them, and we will answer them to the best of our abilities. So please write in the chat at that.
Yeah. Other questions?
I actually have a little piece of logistical information as well to share with you all while you're thinking of some questions. I just want to make sure that you have the deadline information. So the applications are due on January 20th. And there's a financial aid application due as well. That's on February 3rd. We strongly encourage you, if you need scholarship support, to submit that application. It will not be held against you. The admissions process is need blind, so the faculty committee who will be reviewing your applications will not have access to that financial aid information. For sound art students, there's typically 3 that are admitted every year. And if you show need, then there will be a scholarship. It's typically around $30,000 a year. What else? Let me think. There's also, we have a panel, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. Monday, December 2nd from 1 to 5, there's a panel about art. We're calling it Art School Demystified. It's a Zoom panel from 1 to 5 p.m. There will be various professors from the visual arts program who will be speaking about it. We're going to send information about that later, probably tomorrow, but I just wanted you to know that that's happening. There's also the visual arts information session, which is in this building starting at 11:30. You're more than welcome to come up and attend that one as well. well. There's food. Unfortunately, we can't have food in this space, but we do actually have it upstairs, so it's on the 8th floor. And we'd love for you to stick around. You can meet the visual arts faculty and students as well. And yeah, there's an exhibit in the Wallach Gallery, which is on the 6th floor, which you can go to. That opens at noon. And the Open Studios, which is in Prentice Hall from 2 to 5 right across the street. So yeah, that's it.
Julie, is the gallery in Dodge open on Saturdays?
That's an excellent question. I do not believe it is open to the public on Saturdays.
Sorry, if you can find a way, if you're in town, the gallery on the first floor of Dodge has an exhibition up, and there are a number of works of current sound students in that exhibition.
That closed last week.
It closed last week. There will be documentation. Oh, that's what I meant to say. All of the exhibitions, previous exhibitions, the first year shows and the thesis shows, documentation, complete documentation of all of them can be viewed on the website. So if you want to see previous work of students, you can dig back into the archival history. If you can't find it, just reach out to one of us and we'll nudge you towards it. But you can see everything that has been exhibited in the last 10 years, which is pretty remarkable.
No questions online yet. Other questions? Questions in the room?
One question that comes up fairly frequently is, what is Columbia's stance on collaboration? Because while your journey as a student artist is an individual journey, of course, with your art and studies, we do really recognize and encourage collaboration. In fact, we did have two students who did collaborative work with a photographer and our sound art student, and they continued to do collaborative work throughout the course of their studies here. So there's opportunities that you can seek out other students in other disciplines, printmaking, sculpture, photography, etc. And it's very interesting to do collaborations, and it's because it's taking your disciplines, what you know, and it's working with another person on a very deep level. And it's an experience that you would initiate and do on your own, but it's encouraged, and it's a great opportunity to do that, because in different situations you'll be able to meet other artists and other disciplines and have a really rich experience. And also sometimes students have an experience curating, because they on their own, there's summer shows which are student run and student led, and they choose, they take the initiative, and once the 2-year program is over, you're kind of on your own in the world and having experience, being the driver in the seat of your own destiny, work curating other students, other people outside the program. These are really important experiences.
Question in the back.
So we have a question.
Hi. This question is for the current student at the Sound Arts program. I was wondering, you had mentioned that doing this program has had you sort of question some of your learnings in your previous visual arts program. I'm curious if you could elaborate more on that and what you mean about how this program has potentially expanded your mind.
Yeah, totally.
Good question.
I'm currently through Columbia. There's a center called the Center for Teaching and Learning, and in that I have a fellowship. I'm a lead teaching fellow in that. So a lot of my current research involves pedagogy and how institutions think about knowledge and think about teaching, and that, as being a part of this program, has completely changed how I want to learn and how I think about learning and how I think about art learning and how I think about what maybe how sound art is taught now and how sound art can be taught in the future. Yeah, does that answer your question, or do you? Okay.
I should say about just before this question, I should say about the makeup of the students. At the moment, Alec is the only person coming up from a directly visual arts background, but the year immediately prior to Alec, all 3 had a visual arts background, and the year prior to that, 2 of 3 had a visual arts background, and the year before that, all 3 had music backgrounds. So we don't have a preference. There's not a standard. It is very flexible, and what we try to do each year is develop a cohort of people whose work would reinforce one another but not mimic each other. So the idea is like keeping people in their, they come in their own lanes and they develop into whatever direction that they're going to go, and we don't try to over-determine style or content or way of being. It's just an open, curious attempt to try to assemble a cohort of 3 people who might, in a community, support one another.
Hello. What's the program's relationship, the sound art program specifically, relationship with crits, and how they function with sort of with the visual MFA as well? If there's opportunities, or if the students tend to take advantage of crits in that way. I know that sometimes that can change depending on people's interests, but.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's also an evolving. There was the group crits is really important. I come out of 14 years teaching at Bard College, where the group crit is a really critical part of the pedagogy there, and so this semester our crit structure is a bit different from visual arts, and that could change in the future. But we recently had a group crit Yvonne de Dama, and that those crits are works in progress. So in other words, the feedback from the crit leader at that time, students can change the work and adjust things based on the different kinds of response discourse that takes place during the group crit. And then there's one later in the semester that's going to be led by Christoph Cox, who is a sound art theorist, a leading writer in the field of sound art. And he will go from work to work within this exhibition, talking about the nature of the work, the intention of the work, perhaps materials, the question of scale. And then, of course, for first year and thesis, there are crits in the space of the gallery space here, and those tend to be more formal crits in terms of finished work, and it's not, for example, oh, this is a work in progress, so maybe I can change that, but really the work as it stands and what it is, for what it looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like. These are the kinds of questions that are good to be asked in terms of a cold read of what does somebody who is not familiar with you as a student or you as an artist, what are they seeing, what are they feeling, what are they hearing in the first 5 seconds? And so we have a flexibility of the more softer, warmer crits where there is more conversation back and forth, and other ones that are more formal in the formal style of some art schools. So we really try to cast a balance with the formality and also more casual conversational practices. But there are, so I don't know if you have any comments.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, because you're doing a thing, yeah. Talk about that.
I'll also add on to kind of something that Mia was saying there, but we have like visiting artists that come and do studio visits fairly often.
6 per semester.
And those are not quite a critique, but if you want that out of the conversation, you kind of drive the bus there and can get what you want out of those studio visits. And within the program, since the sound art is so small, the community is so small, and the visual arts program is also so small, there's a lot of like cross collaboration that we do, and there's a lot of like outside of normal class time critiques that take place if you want that. Like right now and last year, the 3 current sound artists in my cohort started like a weekly critique group that's like draw of the hat, and that includes the music composition PhD students, the visual artists of all disciplines, and the sound artists, and also the writers sometimes.
And I mean, that's a really good question, because the culture of the group critique is changing. It changes almost every semester, and it depends kind of like who's the hot philosopher at the moment, you know. And so it's really good to have a kind of a responsive, dynamic, hot response to the group critique and how it's being perceived in the moment, both in academia, in the art world, et cetera, because it is always changing. And it's really interesting. The critique culture differs from Europe. I've lived in Europe a number of years and taught there in different capacities. And it's really interesting to notice how there's differences in the culture of group critiques.
Yeah, just a couple of facts that might be useful. Standard minimum for visits with guest artists is 6 per semester in the context of me as grad studio. There's usually 2 group crits in the fall and then 2 in the spring. There are the informal group crits that Alec mentioned with the people who have, it tends to be gathering around expanded media that's less defined, and that's been really important. But I also should say, both Mia and I come from both music and art backgrounds. I taught photography for 4 years before I did my music PhD, and I did an MFA in sculpture. So like the idea of dialogue about art making is maybe the most important part of the program. We're all in constant conversation with one another. I make work in my office, and I'm there every day of the week, and I'm in dialogue with students in that context pretty constantly. So great question. Thank you. More questions?
Just hearing you talk, Seth, I just thought of the question of what is a studio. And I think in New York City, where, space is of the essence, I mean, this real estate for space is nothing else compared to New York City, as we all know. And what does it mean to have an art studio or to work on your computer and have that being your studio? And it's something that I wanted to explore more, but I just think it's a point worth discussing just tangentially a bit, because there's the art studio in your computer, and there's so much that can be done and organized in your computer that you can take and show slides of your work to a curator or to various people who might have interest in having an exhibition of some sort, or showing your work somehow, or giving you some support somehow. And so I think more and more we have to take a flexible stance to the question of what is a studio? How do you work in your studio? What's your studio going to look like after you leave Columbia and you don't have a studio anymore? We want to make this a sustainable situation for you as artists after leaving Columbia. And so as such, it's really important to think about abstractly and conceptually this idea of your place of work and conceiving your work.
While we're waiting for other questions, one other thing that we might mention is we've gone above and beyond in trying to assemble an equipment room full of all of the technology that you might need to make work. And that means media players, Raspberry Pis for video looping, amplifiers, transducers, microphones, audio interfaces, MIDI interfaces, cables, power supplies, whatever it is. We're at a spot now where I haven't had a student in the last year come and ask for a thing that we didn't already have, and that's been because every time a student asks for something that they need, we try to fold it back into the equipment studio after we purchase it for their work in the first year or the thesis show. It doesn't always happen that way, but my standard with students is if you need something for your work and it makes sense for other students to have in the future, that we'll buy that thing and then fold it into the equipment studio. And what that's done is made it so that the outward cost of making work is actually reduced quite considerably. We also have a membership with Materials for the Arts in Queens, which means you can go and I make you all administrators, so you can just make your own appointment and go shop whenever you want. And people are always coming back with like mannequin heads and lamps and like bowling pins and all of the stuff that they might find at Materials for the Arts in Queens. If you aren't familiar with that, take a look on the internet for it. It's really quite a remarkable place. So, and there's a production center in the School of the Arts generally that supports the film program and the visual arts program, and that's like training and rental of $30,000 film cameras and things like that for very high level film stuff. But on the other side, like GoPros and Zooms and DJIs and things that are on the smaller side for you to do rough and tumble, run and gun style collecting audio or collecting video materials for your work.
I want to address something that I've just come to appreciate more myself, and that's the idea of community and what is community. And we just recently had a 60th year anniversary of the School of the Arts, and we had a panel of some very visible artists who came out of our program at the School of the Arts at large. And one thing they talked about that was sustaining for them was community. And it had never really hit me so much as it did in this panel that we had. And I, like, for example, Seth and I are the core faculty for sound art, but we do have a community that includes, say, James Hoff, an artist mentor who repeatedly comes and kind of cycles in, and also of Ivana Dama, who also kind of cycles in and is part of our faculty community, and Luba Deutz, who's also an amazing sound artist, and she's going to be teaching critical issues for us in the spring. She's also been an artist mentor. She's been a frequent visiting artist, and she's part of our faculty community. And so there's that, but also as a potential student or as a student in the 2-year program, which includes summers, which are super active, and it includes winter break, which is also super active, and spring, et cetera, there's communities that are formed there, like these relationships, these networks, the human-to-human connections that really can't be gotten on your own. And I think it's hard to talk about because communities, it's a bit ephemeral. It's hard they might come, they might disappear, they might form, they might regroup, but it is a community that's going to save you, sustain you, really, for your life and for your artistic life. There's other communities, and I have to say, I mean, graduate school is such a fertile ground for building these communities, because you have all of a sudden have a relationship as an artist with other artists doing amazing things that has never existed, and it will not exist after you leave Columbia. So I think the idea of community is something that is really important to think about, and how rich that can be, in your lives, and how that is a sustaining kind of human relationships or friendships, professional ties, etc.
Yeah, I would actually add to that to say, both Mia and I worked pretty extensively with Pauline Oliveros while she was still around, and one of the things that she used to say was community over career. I think if you're looking for an orientation, like philosophically about our program, gallery openings and schmoozing with a cocktail in your hand and business cards is not the vibe we go for. We're much more establishing real relationships with your current peers that become sustaining relationships in an art career that's meaningful and centered for you, rather than a kind of flash in the pan, a momentary high of getting a good group show because you hounded a curator until they gave in. I think we talk a lot about that stuff informally. It's not the subject of classes per se. It does come up in classes, but it's really more an ethos, and I think it's typified by last week we had a retirement party for Brad Garton, who's been teaching at Columbia for 38 years and founded the sound art program. We have 33 sound art alums, and 17 of them came to celebrate that kind of, and that means, like, some of them flew from other places to be in the room to support this professor who dedicated his life to making a community in our space, and we are committed to continuing that kind of engagement. And I think it's an important thing to know about the way that we try to run things at the center. Other questions?
Just adding one more thing that just came to mind about artists is, sometimes we can be a bit introverted because our work, if you're an artist, you're working on your work, and you might not be the most super extroverted people. For example, in theater, they're often the people in theater, actors, actresses, they are quite extroverted. And then we, as other kinds of artists, I don't mean to say that there's this whole personality associated necessarily, but that we come from, perhaps, some of us, maybe a slightly more introverted place of art making. for example, than theater. And so having a community is even more of a thing. So I'm just saying.
I want to thank you guys so much for coming. Those of you in person, those of you on Zoom, thank you so much. If you want to stay, and we hope you will, go up to the 8th floor. The visual arts session will start at 11:30, but there's some yummy food up there now, including breakfast burritos, which we're very excited about. So again, thank you so much. If you have any additional questions, you can always email us at soaadmissions@columbia.edu. I will type it. Oh, somebody typed it in already. One of my colleagues. So great. Thank you so much. And thank you to our panel as well.
Thank you. And if you have questions for Seth and I, there's also the Sound of Art.
Soundart@columbia.edu will get to all of us.
Great. Thank you so much. And we look forward to your admissions applications.